Surely, many of you are already tired of the endless YouTube videos about different strategies, various indicators, and how you can easily make some astronomical sums with things like rapid account growth and so on. I'm tired of it too. And instead of making yet another generic video, I decided in this one to have a call with an employee who used to work at Pocket Option. I should say right away that this is already the second part of the video, so to speak. If you haven't watched the first video, guys, just click here or here in the suggestions and make sure to check it out. In this video, unlike the previous one, I'll be asking him some really serious questions, and I hope he won't be able to dodge them. What complaints did I get after the previous video? Some people said it was all staged, that I supposedly discussed everything with him in advance or something like that. Guys, in the last video, I really did ask some pretty simple questions, but you have to understand me too. Only one person responded. Naturally, on the first call, especially when you consider that the person also agreed to appear in the video, you can imagine how it was. Yes, his voice was changed and he was off camera. But still, the person made some concessions and said he would tell everything. Naturally, in the first interview, I couldn't just start bombarding him with questions straight away, even hypothetically. If I had, nothing would have worked out, he wouldn't have opened up to me, and so on. So, in this video, yes, I've gathered your questions specifically, the ones you wrote to me in the comments under the previous video. What should I ask him? What should I question him about? Anyway, let's not drag this out. Let's get on with our call. But before that, I'd like to mention that there's a link below to my Telegram channel where I post news analysis absolutely free of charge. I also share my signals and post loads and loads of interesting things about trading. So do make sure to check it out. Everything is free. Hi, good to see you. Can you hear me all right?
Yes. Everything's great. Hi, Ram.
Yes. Hi. Thanks again so much for agreeing to take part, let's say, in the second part of my video. I've actually already started recording, so I'd be glad if today we could try to go through some points in more detail, you know? Because I've noticed that many of my subscribers, I'm not sure if you followed the video, no, afterwards.
Yes. I even read some of the comments.
Yes, me too. There you go. But actually, a lot of my subscribers really liked that video. It got quite a lot of views. There you go. But to be honest, there was quite a lot of negativity in the comments, both towards me and towards you. I was just talking about that at the start of the video, about how supposedly we made some sort of arrangement, or that you're hiding something. There you go. Or people were asking me to put forward their questions, the ones they wrote in the comments, so to speak. So I've actually put together a list, and today I'd like to go through the questions from the viewers, not from me.
Yes, I'm all for answering any questions. The only thing is, I'll say right away, guys, I didn't come here to justify myself, to argue with anyone's position, or even more so with anyone's beliefs. I just came to honestly share what my work looked like from the inside, during shifts, in queues of requests, in situations where the client is panicking, but the employee has to follow the regulations, so...
And it's good that you're making that sort of disclaimer, you know, because I can say the same from my side. If anything, please don't take offense at my subscribers. It's just that, you know, the first part came out and I realized it did well, so it made sense to do a second one. And I was also wondering whether you'd even agreed to keep filming or not, because, you know, I sometimes saw some negativity, and honestly, I felt a bit awkward about it in front of you. Because I don't think that, you know, even though I asked things like, what do you think? Is he lying about something or not? I think you were honest enough with me, which is why I decided to record the second part with you, so to speak.
Everything's fine. I'm just happy to record the second part, so it's no problem at all.
If you don't mind, let's get straight to the questions. You see, we're already talking now, you could say, right before New Year's. By the way, happy upcoming New Year to you.
Likewise.
Yeah, let's get started then. I've actually put together a little more than 10 questions. There will be both easy and more difficult ones. You know, some quite intriguing, so to speak. I'm actually curious myself to see how you'll answer them, because I was surprised that my followers, you know, honestly, there were some who were really deeply immersed in the topic. I'd even say they seem to know more about the inner workings than some of the staff. I'd probably like to start by asking if you can tell me about any red flags. Let's put it this way. Things that might make a client be treated negatively, or even get blocked. Or is there anything else that could cause someone to have issues with you right there? I don't know, maybe you have some kind of database or something, so that person gets flagged in your system, so to speak.
Yes. In general, they exist, but again, this is more about behavior that looks suspicious based on documents or payment receipts. A typical banal example. A person has just registered and within an hour has already made several deposits in a row using different methods, and then one of them tries to withdraw everything at once. It just looks like a flow, and like things like that, the system can just mark automatically.
Do you mean that these kinds of transactions aren't typical for an ordinary person or something like that?
Yes, of course, of course. Well, it's just, it's even, a classic case when there are some inconsistencies. For example, in the data, like the name in the profile is one thing, but then during verification, he just sends a different one in the document. Typical trivial inconsistencies that people make.
Is there a specific department that handles this, or is it some kind of software?
Most of this is flagged automatically, after which it is forwarded to support for further investigation.
This is done in most cases to somehow protect the company or the individual from something. I mean, what are the motives behind this? So these are the red flags.
Both ways indeed. I think we even touched upon this very important topic a little bit in our last video, didn't we actually? This also works both ways, for example, to protect us from something as basic as money laundering, just as it helps protect our clients as well. For example, to find out if a client is 18 years old through verification.
All right. Overall, it's a bit unusual for me now because I'm already thinking, we'll move on to the next question soon. Then people will write in the comments like, Robert, you didn't press him enough. Basically, you should have gone deeper into this topic, really dug into it. Yeah? Well, thanks for answering. Let's move on to the next one then.
Yes.
Look, the second question, generally from a viewer, is what mistakes do most traders make? So overall, what have you noticed? Whether it's in terms of maybe verification or in terms of, trading itself. So what can you say about that?
Yes, but as I understand it, we are actually talking more about working directly with customer support. Is that correct?
But I don't know. No, maybe there are some, mistakes that people, keep making and writing about all the time. Maybe there's a basic misunderstanding. What do people usually contact support about?
Look, probably the main mistake everyone makes when contacting support is exactly this chaos in communication. People just write to support without any specifics. They simply write something like, I have a problem, and that's it. And then they drop out of the chat. They don't provide any time, amount, or any confirmation of their errors. What exactly was their problem?
Wait, do you mean that someone just wrote to you and then disappeared?
Yes. And this happens very often. And then in the end, they create several more requests. And as a result, it turns into a mess that doesn't solve their problem.
Well, that's actually a bit strange, to be honest. So the person, it turns out, doesn't get in touch at all, right? As far as I understand, you have support available. If I'm not mistaken, you can also contact you via Telegram and WhatsApp. Is that correct?
Of course, on Telegram, it's actually much easier and much faster.
And yet, there are still people who write and then disappear.
Yes, of course. This is a common mistake that many people make.
Okay, yeah. Well, are there maybe any other points?
Listen, they do exist. It's just actually hard to remember them. One of the mistakes is also when clients try to solve the problem by taking action. Well, by action, I mean, for example, money was debited from the balance, but the balance wasn't topped up, and right away the client starts making several more top-ups. He immediately makes several more top-ups. As a result, that top-up gets lost, and it's much harder to find it through the payment records. And again, this ends up leading to us having to do a lot more work.
I feel. Are there cases, for example, when, say, I don't know, someone has just topped up their account, but maybe they did the top-up incorrectly, so the money didn't go through, got lost, something like that? People have written to me about things like this.
There were times when they simply sent the money to the wrong account details.
Well, obviously, yeah. I've had that too. Even people write to me about it sometimes, Like, I sent it and the money didn't arrive. I always say, just contact support, because, well, as many times as that's happened, thankfully it doesn't happen often, but every time I say, write to support about this, they'll help you. In fact, they've always helped, both on Poker Option and on Binarium.
Well, we did our best. Well, the guys are doing their best now, and back then we did our best too. But of course, there are situations when you just can't help, like for example, when someone sends money to the wrong account details. Unfortunately, that's already beyond our control, but in most cases, everything gets resolved.
All right, so let's move on to our third question. Look, the third question actually comes from our followers. Is it true that on Pocket Option, managers deliberately encourage people to trade? Like they write to you on purpose, offer some services or something like that. Do they get paid for this or what? I mean, what's their motivation? If you know anything about this, could you tell us?
Yes. Look, they are rather trained to maintain activity and respond according to scripts so that the person does not simply leave. Well, that is, it rarely looks like they're, come on, press. More often than not, they send some section of training there. They try to motivate them to have the traders try trading on a demo account, send some materials about deposits, promotions, and so on.
Well, basically, the main goal here is more about keeping the person engaged, about marketing, or, not directly, but sort of nudging them towards things like, come on, take out some loans, invest your money, that sort of thing.
Yes, of course. And there's another point here. It's just that sometimes there's a situation where newcomers who join go overboard. I mean, specifically pocket employees right now. Well, I've seen cases where someone comes with an account issue, and in response, they just start bombarding them with unnecessary suggestions. The client doesn't need that, he gets angry, and I completely understand him. When someone has an urgent issue, they don't care about the platform's features at that moment.
I see, yes. You mean that newcomers in support go overboard with how they talk to people?
Yes. Well, that happens too. Human factor.
Well, does anyone actually keep an eye on this, or is it monitored in any way? I don't know, maybe.
Management, of course.
I see.
Well, again, it's not a direct motivation for them to do this. It's just that at the initial stages, the guys lack a bit of experience and they don't quite understand what to do.
I think that here, people are more interested in the fact that they don't really have the motivation. For example, for someone to invest a lot of money or anything like that. There just isn't that sort of thing.
No, their job, if we're talking specifically about that department, is to keep the traders' attention on the platform. Well, obviously, and it's no secret, we discussed this in the first video as well. The platform earns money from every trade. That is, it receives a commission, and accordingly, of course, it's in their interest for the trader to trade as much as possible. So the primary thing is to consistently keep the trader's focused attention engaged with the platform, right? But if we're talking about some kind of aggressive pushing, like you mentioned, that doesn't happen, of course not.
Well, thanks for the answer. Let's move on to the next one then. Look, by the way, this actually really surprised me as well. Here's the fourth question, and it's this. Why does support sometimes take more than 8 hours to reply? It surprised me because, for example, I, thank God, quite rarely and objectively contact support. I mean, I probably haven't had any cases recently where I've actually written to them myself about anything. But people have written in. So it turns out that for some people, this does happen, that they get a reply after a long time. So why might that be?
You talk about 8 hours, but in reality, sometimes they have to wait even longer, much longer. Look, first of all, there are naturally peak loads. I mean, when there are a lot of registrations, when there are promotions going on, when there's a lot of activity, the queue for responses grows accordingly. Secondly, some requests can't be resolved with just one message. For example, with payment requests, sometimes you have to wait for a response from a contractor, check statuses, and all of that naturally takes time,
By the way, I've heard that in a lot of companies these days, I'm not sure if it was like that when you worked there, or maybe it is now, that AI does the communicating. So, did you ever have anything like that? Or maybe you considered it? I don't know.
I wasn't present, and as far as I know, and from what I can see, since I'm also currently communicating with support in Pocket, it seems there isn't any AI involved.
Well, that's actually interesting, to be honest, because did you often get questions that were, radically different from the basic ones? I mean, most people ask some basic questions that an AI can answer. Or, as you say, are there questions where you really need to, analyze things, request some additional information? Well, mostly.
You mean perhaps a non-standard or unusual question that deviates from the norm?
Not their usual run-of-the-mill one.
They actually make up about 70% of the total, in fact. And this is exactly what delays the answer to the question.
Got it. More of the unconventional ones.
Yes, of course. Well, it's just, again, there are way too many investigations. Basically, if you lose a payment, you won't be able to identify the problem with a standard template. In any case, you have to expand your communication with your client. You need to find out where the payment was made. Well, I mean, from banking, from a crypto wallet, or from other electronic payment systems. Then you need to ask them for the actual screenshot, either from the crypto wallet or a PDF from the bank. At what time was the payment made? So there are just too many clarifying questions that AI simply can't handle. Maybe someday they'll make it so that AI can answer even some basic questions, but for now I don't see that with Pocket.
I get you, I understand. So overall, for example, support, It turns out they work on weekends too, right?
Yes, of course. Of course, absolutely, literally every single day.
I see. But at the same time, sometimes, what's the maximum possible today? So does it ever happen that you, I don't know, lose messages from people? What should people do in that case?
It does happen after all because it's also a human factor. But none of us are without fault here, and someone might simply lose a message from the trader. Usually it's found easily enough when they write to you again. But again, that's a very rare case. And let me tell you guys right away, just so you understand, if you don't get a reply within 5 minutes, don't keep spamming messages, because your turn in the response queue will only get pushed back further since you'll be bumped higher up in the requests. But if you see that you haven't received a reply for a day, 2 days, or maybe even longer, then it's actually okay to remind them about yourself and simply repeat your question or your issue again.
Well, I just don't know. You see, I haven't come across this sort of thing in a long time. I used to write, but back then, well, I don't want to say anything for sure. Maybe there were just fewer people in the database back then, so they managed to get back to everyone. But I always got a reply fairly quickly. Is there any kind of prioritization? For example, if you have a regular account, or say a VIP account and so on.
No.
They try to respond to everyone in the same way.
No, I just thought, you never know, just in case. You know, someone might say to me, well, you have a different account, that's why everything gets done quickly for you, but for us it takes ages. Well, thanks for the answer. Let's move on to the next question then. Look, question 5. Actually, it's probably one of the most worrying ones. This is about whether Pocket ever deliberately delays withdrawals for some people, for example.
Look, I haven't seen any stories where it was said outright, like, let's delay it because we don't like this person. In reality, it's usually just that checks are carried out. Payment system restrictions, manual handling of unusual situations, especially when the amounts are large or when someone tries to withdraw to a different account than the one they used to deposit. Basically, it's mostly these kinds of situations that lead to the withdrawal cycle gets prolonged. But to answer the question of whether withdrawals are deliberately delayed or not, I've never seen that happen.
It's just, the reason I'm asking is because, again, for example, some people get their money in 10 minutes. For instance, someone says they've been waiting for their money for 3 days already and it still hasn't arrived. So why did it happen faster for some people and take longer for others?
That's because everything is in order for the first one. The data matches, the method is clear, the documents are in order, but the second one deposits money one way and withdraws it another. Plus they change their account details, and on top of that, their profile is a mess. And that's when this whole chain of clarification starts, the one we talked about earlier.
I understand you. Well, I mean, it's not like there's ever been a case where someone deliberately didn't pay someone or anything like that. I'm not talking about not paying at all or, just for a while. There's nothing like that, right?
No.
During my time working, there definitely wasn't anything like that.
I get you. Look, the 6th question is, more of a legend, a myth, I suppose. Like, whether a demo account is actually different from a real one or not. Because you can't imagine how many people actually, keep writing about how they made money on a demo account, but on a real account, they lose everything. When I was trading on the demo for 2 weeks, 3, even a month, everything was just perfect. But as soon as I switched to a real account, that's it. I start losing straight away. So what should I do? Exactly. So what can you say about that?
Look, I didn't deal with this because it's simply not my department. But I've never seen any settings or heard about any kind of setup like the demo should give more wins. But at the same time, I completely understand why people feel like the demo just gives more. In demo mode, people are calmer, they rush less, they're less fidgety, and there are fewer emotional actions. Well, with a real account, it's just a different story. You feel like you need to trade faster. If you suddenly start losing money, you feel like you have to get it back immediately. It's simply a psychological factor. I can say this myself as a trader now. I noticed exactly the same thing in myself.
Well, you see, for me, this question wasn't particularly interesting because I more or less expected that you would answer that way. And I don't know, when I trade myself, for example, it doesn't really matter to me anymore whether it's a demo account or a real one. I mean, I always try to trade as calmly as possible, whether it's one or the other. But I also completely understand that, when someone is trading on a demo account, like I always say, it's all about psychology. Because on a demo, they really don't care at all what happens to that money. But as soon as they start trading on a real account, they immediately start stressing. They instantly begin to think, oh, what if I lose it all? And the worst thing I've noticed is when people, start thinking things like, oh, I could have bought this or that with this money. Like, being able to buy something for themselves, for example, right? And then they lose it all in an instant. Naturally, all of this emotional background, in my opinion, has a huge impact on everything.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, let's move on. Things won't be quite so simple from here on. Otherwise, right now, someone watching is probably thinking, oh, here we go again. Of course, his questions are all easy stuff. I've actually prepared a bit more for our interview this time, so I'd appreciate it if you keep answering everything honestly as we go on. Look, someone also wrote in about having some disputes with Pocket. So my question is, are there situations where if there really is, say, a dispute, some kind of misunderstanding, or even, I don't know, a platform glitch, right? There are times when there's technical maintenance or something else going on. Are there situations where Pocket meets clients halfway?
It happens. But again, not because someone made a special request or anything like that. Usually, if there is a confirmed technical failure or an error on the service side, or for example on the contractor's side, like with payment systems, then yes, in those cases, compensation does happen. They check the logs, look at the facts, and there are a lot of investigations about this. Well, I mean, the process itself is quite involved, but yes, such situations do occur.
I see. And were there any, real cases, perhaps?
Well, personally, I had a situation where right in the middle of active operations, the person's interface just froze. He couldn't complete any of the operations. Sorry, what was that again?
Yeah, I know what you mean. I've had that happen to me too. But I thank God at that time, I was trading, that's it. I've had situations where, over all these years, I've had things crash or the site would freeze or something else would go wrong. I've had that happen, and you have too. And also on Binarium, back when I used to trade there. It happens everywhere, really, but I just never wrote about it anywhere.
Well, there are those who write about it, and there are those who don't. In any case, yes, such situations are also discussed, but anything can happen.
Well, I get what you mean, but it turns out that basically, if such a situation arises, there have been cases where everything went in someone's favor, is that right?
Yes, not always. Well, in any case, investigations are carried out. What actually happened, and whether it was a platform error, or maybe, for example, I don't know, the trader's internet connection froze. In any case, there are investigations. In any case, there are checks. If it's a platform error, then yes, of course, compensation is provided. Pocket always tries to resolve conflicts fairly because after all, it's a reputational risk.
Well, that's obvious, just like any other company, really. Yeah, right. Alright, let's move on to the next one. Look, here's a question for you. A lot of people have been asking about this. Is it more profitable for the company when a client trades for a long time, even if it's not for huge amounts of money, or when someone trades large sums in the short term, like say they trade big for a week and then leave? Let me just say my bit straight away, alright? Since I work with both Binarium and Pocket as a partner, for me, it's obviously more profitable if someone trades for a long time, regardless of the amount, really. I mean, for example, I earn from the turnover, so it's in my interest for the person to have a high trading volume. And overall, that's exactly why it's in my interest for the person's income to grow and their trading volume to increase. That way, I'll be earning as well. And is it the same for the company? Or, based on that logic, could you explain it in a bit more detail?
Yes, absolutely, yes. Same here. In the long run, it's always more beneficial for a person to just stay for a long time. Here, things that happen quickly and emotionally often end up with burnout, anger, negativity, and eventually someone leaving.
Well, I've noticed too that, in fact, there are people who, even those trading in the VIP club or elsewhere, I noticed that there are people who, have just joined and immediately start trading with some crazy amounts of money. And if they suddenly lose that money, not even necessarily by following signals, but just on their own, they mostly end up quitting trading altogether. So, it looks as if the person just had a lot of spare cash lying around. They came in, lost it all really quickly, literally in a day or two, and then just stopped doing it. So the question is, why did they even bother coming in the first place?
Well, there's also the factor of gambling addiction at play here. It's not a normal, serious approach to trading, it's just gambling.
Agreed. That definitely has a big impact, I think.
Yes, of course. Absolutely.
Right, let's move on to the next one. Look, the next question is just purely your opinion. I'm really interested. So, what do you think as of now, yeah? Given how you're trading at the moment, what do you think are, I don't know, maybe 3 things the platform should improve, yeah? So that there would be less hate directed at them, or in general, just to make the platform better overall. So tell us from both perspectives, as an employee and now as a trader.
Look, first, it's probably the communication from support itself. I mean, transparent statuses, clear timelines, and fewer template responses. Although I understand that this will be much harder and possibly response times will increase. But I think that's exactly the thing that will improve the platform, and I believe there will be less hate. What really gets to people is the uncertainty, when they don't understand what's going on. And the mind always fills in the worst case scenario.
I agree with that. People certainly have a vivid imagination.
Yes. The second point is probably having clear hints for verification and payments right in the interface, explained in plain language.
You know, I can add here that I made several videos on YouTube specifically about how to deposit and withdraw money there. And it would be cool if there was some sort of mini tutorial right on the platform itself, you know? Of course, I'm glad that I recorded those videos, you know, and they got a lot of views. But this just goes to show once again that people are interested in this topic. Exactly. They watch it, but for some reason there doesn't really seem to be any proper instructions on the platform itself, so to speak.
Yeah, honestly, I don't even know why that is. Because it would really reduce the number of support questions. I mean, a lot of problems actually come from the fact that people didn't know you couldn't do it that way and that you have to do it differently. And the third point is probably more explicit warnings specifically in high-risk areas for beginners. That is, not prohibitions, but honest boundaries and explanations as to why problems often arise at certain points here. For example, with the same OTC market, so that beginners simply understand how OTC differs from the regular market.
Well, obviously, yeah. Yeah. But you see, also regarding OTC, I generally see that Pocket are really putting a lot of emphasis on this. Like, they're actually putting a lot of effort into trying to, you know, somehow get the OTC market moving.
Yes. Of course, it doesn't always turn out well, like with artificial intelligence, for example, because...
Yes, I saw that button. It's just, I'm here, guys, sorry, but this is fucked up, honestly.
Well, the most interesting thing is that when I was still working there, quite a lot of money was invested in development. But in the end, well, it's still terrible to this day.
No, I got the impression there, you know, I understand, of course, that it's not like some random script or anything like that. But when I was filming the video about this button, I thought it really felt like it was scripted. Up, down, you know? Yeah. Although I'm sure it's actually set up in a completely different way. But that's exactly how it looked. And that did throw me off a bit, to be honest.
Yes, it's absolutely different. And there were rumors going around among us. What kind of amounts are we even talking about? Well, I mean, in terms of investments...
They allocated a lot of money for this, did you say?
Well, enormous amounts of money. These are just enormous amounts. But we can see the result ourselves. So what did we end up with?
Yes, I agree. Right, well, let's move on to the next one, man. Look, here's the next question. Also, one of our subscribers actually wrote in asking, where's the cash register then? So look, if you're saying that the earnings come from commissions, where does the money from losing trades go? Where is it kept while someone else is being paid out their profit? So could you explain that in a bit more detail?
Yes. Look, it's just important to understand the mechanics themselves. Money doesn't fly off into some safe marked profit or conversely loss, and they are not assigned to any specific person. They essentially circulate within the system itself in the general circulation from which payment obligations are then settled.
So basically, it doesn't work like, for example, someone loses and then their money is immediately given to another person, right?
Yes, that's absolutely not the case. Another point is this. People often imagine it as a game of trader versus platform for some reason.
But actually, I'm also asking these kinds of questions for a reason. I sort of made all those notes for myself as well. It's just that, yes, a lot of people have this idea, you know, that when you're trading, it's as if you're competing, so to speak, with the majority opinion, that you can only make money if someone else loses money, and that's how you profit. That's basically how it works, so to speak. And it's as if you're going against the platform itself, right? That's exactly the understanding that many people have.
There you go.
But in reality, it's just the work of a product where there are incoming payments, outgoing payouts, checks, limits, payment partners, and all of this has to balance out. I hope I explained it more or less clearly.
Well, I can't say that exactly. You know, even I don't fully get it. No, I mean, I more or less understand how it all works for you, to be honest. But how should I put it? But I also understand that it's quite tough.
Look, you need to understand that the funds are constantly moving within the platform.
No, I get that, yeah. Well, I mean, it's not like there's some separate safe, you know, where the money is kept. Like, you know, this many people lost their cash and Poker Option just took it for themselves.
No, there is absolutely no such thing as that, not at all.
I get you. Okay, look, here's a question that's also about Pocket. Well, it's actually very similar to the one we had before. Basically, a lot of people say, especially if someone comes from crypto into options, many of them focus on the fact that when they're trading crypto, they can immediately see what the commission is, right? That is, how much is taken from each of their trades. And people ask why in crypto they immediately know all the commissions and so on. But in Pocket, they don't see anything at all. I mean, like, they only see some kind of profitability and that's it.
Look, it's just a different product here. That's exactly what it's all about. On an exchange, if we're talking about a crypto exchange, you pay a commission as a separate transaction, either for the trade itself or for its execution. Here though, if we're talking about Pocket, the cost is built into the trading terms. That is, into the payout percentages, the coefficients, the very product model itself.
Ah, you mean that the percentage is already included within the percentage that the trader supposedly receives?
Yes, of course. Honestly, I do understand why people don't like it. The brain always likes it when everything is in one line and you can just point at it with your finger.
I agree, actually. Even, honestly, if on PokerStone they just wrote somewhere that this is included, or, you know, at least put it in small print somewhere so that people would understand, then I think there wouldn't be any questions about it.
Well, by the way, this might actually be something else that Pocket still needs to do.
Because honestly, I really do notice that people have always had a kind of negative attitude towards options in general. You know, because some consider it to be high-risk trading or something like that. And people, when they see, well, they're used to it. Although, honestly, I don't know why everyone treats crypto like, wow, everything's great. But with options, it's immediately like, scam and so on. Well, probably because there were platforms that scammed people. That's why there's this kind of attitude. Although in crypto, there have been loads of different coins and so on. But people are just used to the idea that in crypto, and actually in stocks or wherever, everything is always clearly stated for you. You always know exactly how much you'll pay and so on. But with options, you see, because they apparently, by the way, I actually didn't know this, I didn't realize that they include absolutely everything in that percentage. But if they explained everything more clearly, I think people would actually have less negativity. If basically they explained how they make their money, so that people understood where their profit comes from. A lot of people genuinely think, you know, that when they lose money, it means the site has made money, something like that.
Well, yeah, it's just the internal math, which is actually more complicated and isn't explained the same way as it is in crypto. That's all there is to it. Maybe, yeah, if it were explained simply and was more out in the open, it would be much better.
We'll definitely need to write something. By the way, are you still in touch with anyone from that? And, I don't know, did you have any interactions with other employees?
Not right now. At the moment, I'm not talking to anyone.
Well, for you, I mean, you were sort of forbidden from doing that afterward. Or, well, you just didn't really hang out with anyone in particular.
No. Well, it just so happened that I don't have any close friends among my colleagues, and in general, I don't have any close communication with them.
I see. Well, that's a shame, of course. It would have been nice, you know, to find out some inside info or something.
Insider information, yes. That wouldn't be bad.
Alright, okay, let's move on to the next question. Thanks for answering that one. Look, let me probably ask you the final question. I've actually been asked this one 3 times. Mainly people wrote about it in the comments, and elsewhere too. So, have you ever had a situation where there was some kind of instruction that someone could withdraw money? Not more than they missed it. Do you get what I mean? So, have you ever had a situation where, for example, someone invested, say, 100,000 rubles, made $1 million, but could only withdraw the 100 grand and could not take out the whole million? By the way, I've had that happen to me too. Ages ago, it happened to me on Pocket. To be honest, I mostly trade on Vitamin. I had a situation there that I didn't really like. Once, I made quite a bit of money. The amount was over 1 million rubles. I wanted to withdraw it all at once. And I saw that I had withdrawal limits. Let me think, it was something like $1,000 or $2,000, I think. But I was able to withdraw everything, though I had to create loads of requests, you know what I mean? A lot of withdrawal requests for the total amount I needed. In the end, they processed everything for me, but when I saw that limit, I did start to wonder. And I think that's exactly what people are asking about, because some see withdrawal limits that match the size of their funds, for example. Could you explain that, please?
Look, that's exactly what I wanted to talk about. When you started talking about how you submitted a lot of withdrawal requests, I would put it this way. It's not a strict ban like, say, profit is forbidden or some specific rule on the platform, but at the same time, it's not a complete myth either. What am I talking about? This brings us back to what we already talked about before. There are limits and verification scenarios, especially when, for example, there's a sudden withdrawal, like when someone invested the same 10,000 and in the end earned, say, 140, whatever, a large unusual amount compared to the account's history. And then it might just seem to the person that the system is blocking them, but actually it's just a basic step-by-step process. From the inside, it looked like this. The larger the amount and the more inconsistencies, whether in data, method, or history, the more questions arise from security and payment partners. And sometimes a person just ends up in a scenario where time and confirmation are needed. But if we're talking about some specific belief, like for example, that you can't withdraw more money than you deposited, well, that's just not true, of course. I think, in fact, a lot of people will write in the comments that they have simply withdrawn more than they deposited. And you and I are two living examples of that ourselves.
Well, yeah. Yeah, no, of course. That's what I'm saying. Naturally, over all this time, I've already withdrawn much, much more than I ever put in back then. Well, yeah, you see, with people here, I think there's more to it. The problem is that a lot of people, tend to overthink things in advance. So, for example, they see that they're only allowed to withdraw a certain amount and they immediately start worrying. Basically, the problem, as I see it, even among my own subscribers, is this. Here's someone who's just joined late. They might not have even traded once yet, but they're already like, so, how will I withdraw my money? What else do I need to do? And on the one hand, it's great that people, approach this consciously, but on the other hand, a person should at least start getting some results first. Because when I started, for the first 3 months, really, there definitely weren't any real results. I was just losing money. But some people, try to grab everything at once, thinking, now I'll succeed, I'll start making money straight away. But here, I think it's better to start by asking yourself these kinds of questions, rather than worrying about other things. Because, I don't know, no matter how long I've been trading myself, or how many people I know who trade and everything's fine, people still ask these sorts of questions. When I asked, what questions can I ask you, I got quite a few like this. So somehow people get these ideas that, no, they won't pay anything out or something like that. So these are the kinds of worries people have, in general.
Well, honestly, some of the questions you asked both in the previous video and in this one seem a bit strange to me. But apparently, yes, people are concerned about this. And many people really do, as you said, jump ahead when sometimes you just need to.
Or not,
Obviously, although I can't really say right now, at the moment there are only a few platforms left. Binary and Pocket, right? Well, basically there aren't really any other platforms. Back in the day, when there were others, of course, I also, for example, got caught out by scammers. There were some dodgy ones. Some platforms like that. But now, basically, there are 2 platforms. They work fine. There are no complaints about them. But people still, maybe from the old days, or maybe someone will post a negative comment somewhere online, and as soon as a person sees it, they immediately start to worry. Because, I'm sorry, by the way, that we've gone off topic from the questions in general, the last one I asked you, but I catch myself thinking that basically people start to worry that something might be wrong because they come in and think, or rather it seems to them that it's very easy to make money. Do you know what I'm saying? So they come in with really high expectations, thinking that everything will just work out for them like that. And since it seems so easy, then why should I have to pay for anything? But then the beginner starts to try things out, to develop. God willing, if they're lucky, of course. But sooner or later, they end up losing money, and that's when they realize it's not as simple as they thought.
With thoughts like the ones you're describing, I really don't think you should get into trading. Because, well, I've seen more than one person like that myself. someone who just burned out, who came in with those kinds of thoughts, thinking everything would work out quickly for them, right? That they'd make millions in the first week, but in the end they ran into difficulties and left trading altogether. With that kind of mindset, you definitely shouldn't come here.
Yeah, I agree with you. Actually, I want to thank you for agreeing to appear in the video again. Even though, of course, you're without your face and under a different name, it's still nice that, let's say, you didn't refuse, even after a bit of hate from my subscribers towards you. Personally, I can give you some feedback that both last time and this time, I think you're answering me honestly, because I'm not really. Like some people wrote that supposedly somewhere out there, maybe you're not telling me something. No, maybe you're not saying something, of course Andrea. But from my side, I can say that I'm actually glad that we had a chat, both back then and now. I think my subscribers will also be happy to watch this episode, to listen in. And maybe, yes, it will help to get rid of some fears. To be honest, I thought that in some moments it would be a bit tougher. But you know what else I realised? When I was putting together the list of questions, I have to admit, I'm not exactly a top-notch interviewer. As you can see, I tend to go off on a bit of a monologue. Honestly, sorry about that. Basically, it's like I want things to be a bit more hardcore, a bit more intense. When I was coming up with the questions, I thought, now you're going to start telling something, the real juicy stuff for the viewers. Why do people react negatively when they watch? Afterwards, they write negative comments because when they tune in, they expect you to start telling something, something negative, something bad, like someone being cheated or scammed, that sort of thing. But thank God there haven't been any cases like that. Honestly, I wouldn't want to trade on a platform like that myself if things like that were happening.
Well, there are a few more points here. First of all, honestly, I haven't encountered anything like that. Just to talk about it, I was actually quite sincere, and I have no reason to beat around the bush. Not on any of the questions you asked me. And overall, well, it's not hard for me to come on the video, and I hope that I even helped someone and cleared up some questions. But again, the thing is, I just haven't encountered anything like that, so I don't have any negativity to pour out or any really sharp topics to talk about. And you also need to understand that I was just a regular support employee. Perhaps if I were a senior manager at this very company, someone who had truly been wronged, well, then perhaps I would indeed have many more skeletons hidden away in my closet. But I haven't encountered anything like that.
Wait, so do you actually have any contacts left? I just thought of it now as you were talking. Like, if you know anyone else, maybe someone who had a different position or something. Do you still have anyone's contacts from the guys there at all? Or maybe, what do you think? Would it even be possible to call someone up?
Listen, I'll look into it. I cannot promise anything at all, especially since, to be perfectly honest, well, you see, I do not know if the particular person would genuinely agree to participate in such an interview with you, or indeed whether they would not. I won't promise anything, but I'll check. Maybe I still have some of the guys' contacts left.
Well, it would actually be cool, yeah? I'd be really grateful to you. Thank you very much as well. So, well, I suggest that since we've already, been chatting for, over an hour now? Yeah, we've been talking for quite a while. I actually want to thank you. So, once again, thank you very much for agreeing to have this call. Yeah, I think we'll keep in touch then. If anything, I'm always here for you. If you have any questions specifically about trading too, basically, I'd be happy to have another call with you, honestly. And if anything, we can trade together, just like I promised. Yeah, as I told you, we'll trade together and see what results we get. I'll try to get you some good numbers, so to speak.
It would be my absolute great pleasure indeed.
Alright then, let's keep in touch. I'm off now as well, sorry again, and happy upcoming holiday, I suppose. Guys, of course, you'll be watching this video in the new year, in 2026 already. Yeah, but I hope they'll like it too, so to speak. Maybe it'll come out right during the New Year holidays, and someone might find it interesting to listen to an hour of our chat, so to speak, and draw some conclusions for themselves.
Yes, I also want to congratulate everyone on the upcoming holidays just like you. We'll stay in touch anyway, and I hope that I was able to help some of you with this video.
Well, yes, I actually hope so too. Because, guys, it wasn't exactly easy for me to just, go and set all this up, and then also negotiate with the person so that they'd actually agree to go through with it all. So I'd really appreciate it if you could support me by giving a thumbs up. Also, leave your comments below. What do you think about this interview? I've tried to cover all the questions you've sent me, except for a couple. I really hope you enjoy this format. Just a reminder, all the useful links are down below this video. Be sure to check them out. See you next time.